Good night, owls and morning birds. You're listening to K.THX 864.3 FM in the void. We're coming at you from the dry bed oasis, the railroad town with no trains. This is Dalego Junction, home to 438 people lazing through the days and me, the faceless voice to carry you through the nights. This is a town haunted by the glory of its past, a ghost of what it used to be. The railroad tracks that run through it were once the arteries of America, pumping blood through small towns like this one. But as time marched on, those lifelines were severed, and the towns left to rot. These days, those railways lie smothered under asphalt, tracks exposed like half-buried bones. I remember the nights I spent walking along those tracks just to see where they'd take me. Places whose names were only known to those who got off at the wrong stop. Some people might see these towns as victims of progress and the all-consuming hunger of industry, but the residents of Dalego Junction have accepted their lot in life, content with the isolation, and compelled to silence their curiosity of the outside world. For the locals lived in fear. See, the day the trains died, a monster was born in its place. A long road that stretched through town like a great black serpent. The locals call it the line. They avoid even looking at it, believing it would tempt them with promises of grandeur and carry them off to some unknown land if they let it. They'd rather stay here, where the mundanity was familiar. It was safe, at least. Still, the residents of Dalego Junction were happy to play host to the strangers who dared to cross the line and partake in that forbidden fruit. It was the least they could do to honor the town's roots. After all, this was the only respite from the barren nothing that surrounded it for miles. Even if these strangers only saw their town as a pit stop, those brief interactions were enough of a taste of the outside world to sate them. Though sometimes that temptation works in reverse. A stranger might get a taste of that stillness and see it as an escape, such as the quiet Zoe Mason, an IT specialist who moved to Dalego Junction this past fall. The locals were happy to have a new face in town, but Zoe rarely leaves her home on Sanderson, and her lights stay on all through the night into the early hours of the morning. They're on now, even as I speak to you. In the rare instances that the locals have caught Zoe out in the wild, they would ask her where she was from, but she'd simply say, "The coast," with apprehension in her voice. She always replied curtly and with a hollow smile. "What brought you out here?"
I wanted a fresh start.
"And where do you work now?"
Remote.
"Any plans this weekend?"
No.
Never one to give extra details, Zoe would always find a convenient excuse to escape the polite interrogation, not to be seen again for days or weeks at a time. It left many locals to wonder why she'd come to such a small place just to lock herself away. But a fresh start didn't mean making friends. No. She was hiding from a monster of immeasurable size that could never die, one to dwarf even the local serpent. Zoe Mason from the coast feared nothing more than the ocean itself. And what better place for her to hide than a desert? A salt flat at that. If any place could offer respite from the sea, it was the rotted corpse of a lake. Yet at times she could hear the rumble of the ocean behind her ears. And when the sky would go dark, the stars looked like specks of light peeking through the water's surface, with winds like the current trying to take her away again. Even the salt in the air served a grim reminder. But here she could just close the blinds and ignore the outside world. Inside, the dangers were under her control. So what if the dry air made her nose bleed? And so what if she couldn't enjoy the rain anymore? She left behind everything she knew. But she was safe now, right? And living here, if she ever got a little stir-crazy, she could afford to chance a little trip outside. In fact, this past Tuesday, she did force herself to escape the stale air of her apartment and feel the sun, though it actually happened to be a rare day for rain, for she had seen it since moving. The clouds blotted out the harsh sun and brought a cool air to the desert valley, so it was still a much-needed change for her, a pleasant one all the same. She was standing in line for a coffee. Some blog said the feeling of a warm cup could simulate the effect of human touch, and she really needed that right now. Though somehow even this little town still had lines. And she was impatient. Her head pounded with the indistinct chatter of patrons and inoffensive acoustic jazz over cheap speakers. She lamented not getting it delivered instead, but that would have defeated the purpose. So she stood quiet, eyes fixating on the TV running the news. It was muted, the caption cycling through a report that had something to do with the school bake sale. But as it cut to the weather, she could somehow hear the reporter's voice echo in her mind. The rain will bring the usual seasonal flooding starting tonight into the early morning, so expect some road closures. It's advised to stay home and avoid driving until the flooding recedes. Then we can expect sun again on Thursday, going into the weekend. Zoe's thoughts were drowned out by the sound of her strained breath and heart pounding in her ears as she braced herself on the line divider. She could hardly see the static of the television past hot tears. And as she went to rub her eyes, she saw someone reach out to take her hand. But when she looked up, she was back in her apartment, sitting at her desk, music playing quietly on her speakers, and rain tapping at the window. She couldn't remember how she got home, or if she even got the coffee she wanted. Everything between standing in line and sitting back at her desk was a blur. Did she even go outside? The thought couldn't fester before she heard the rumble of thunder shake her window. The rain. That was real. Every drop made her flinch and dig her fingers into her arms. Yet the constant rhythmic tapping was hypnotic in a way, melting into the music and the sound of the soft radio static. Breathe. That's all she had to do. Nothing could hurt her inside. She was safe here. Breathe. The danger was under her control. Breathe. Just relax. Listen to the music. And breathe.
Lost along the way.
Wake up alone, a pile of bones on autopilot. Thinking of home, need to buy a dome, sun on your eyelids. If you stay or not,
They got your number.
if you pray or not,
They got your number. Liquid gold in the honeycomb. Like it or not, they got your number.
you can wait till sickness takes or the tide rips. Break your bread with the man instead, it keeps a tight ship. If you're named or not,
You're just a number.
if you pray or not,
You're just a number.
die in vain seeking higher planes.
Gotta wake up, babe. It's in U.S. America. Lost along the way. Lost along the way. Days to serve, days to serve, days to serve.
Born on third, kick your spurs, you plastic cowboy. Enjoy the ride home, don't fret about the chumps you employ.
Those who call the shots and run the numbers say you're the best we got, you're such a wonder. Mind your lanes, don't let it ride your waves. This whole ocean's yours, we'll serve in U.S. America. Lost along the way. To serve, days to serve, days to serve. Lost along the way. Days to serve, days to serve, days to serve. Someday it's gonna tear apart.
skipped and snapped Zoe back into reality as her car jerked to a halt. She instinctively stepped on the gas, only to be met with a sickening rattle that made her stomach drop. Her fingers were red from the grip she had on the steering wheel, and she stared out into the night, rain beating against the car windows. How she had gotten here was once again a blur, yet, without a second thought, she threw open the car door and leapt into the cold night air. The rain had brought the flood after all, turning the desert into a vast mud pit that now consumed the tires of her car. And with each step Zoe took, it started to pull her down as well. She didn't get far before the ground gave way and swallowed her to the ankles. Despite everything, the ocean had made its way across the barren desert and finally caught up with her. And for what reason? What had she done to earn its ire? It was a freak accident, an unlucky wave that dragged her down and showed her the dark underside of the ocean that she once loved. How could she trust it when at any moment it could happen again? Would she even be lucky enough to survive a second time? The water ebbed and flowed across her skin as if to taunt her, dredging up the fears she had tried to escape.
What were you thinking? Why did you think this town would be safe? Nowhere is safe. You're a coward. You should have let the ocean take you and got it over with. Now what are you going to do? Just give up.
Eventually, the steady sway of water and the winds blowing through her hair melted the thoughts away as she saw herself back on that beach, sun on her skin and board in hand. She relaxed her shoulders, and they creaked in relief. But as she looked down, expecting to see the sea foam rush across her feet, she instead saw the reflection of the flooded salt flats and someone she didn't recognize. A face, aged rapidly by stress, staring back with dull eyes partially obscured by heavy lids. She was no longer the IT specialist from the coast who spent her weekend surfing, but a scared nobody, a hermit ruled by paranoia. Those tired eyes traveled up from her weary reflection to rest on the horizon, taking in the sight the rain had brought. The salt flats surrounding Dalego Junction were now a mirror reflecting the sky, the mountains inverted and stars dancing on the Earth's surface, with the distant glow of the city lights dyeing it all with a gold tint. Zoe stood captive to its beauty, a hostage to serene bliss. She could no longer run to her stale apartment and shut the blinds. She stood frozen in quiet, relaxed terror for what felt like hours. But nothing happened. There was no freak wave defying a natural law to drag her under again. No incomprehensible beast chasing her across the country. No revenge plot to finish what they started, and no they. None of the scenarios she had imagined came to fruition in this, her most vulnerable moment that she had planned so thoroughly to avoid. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been plotting to bring her to this exact moment. And maybe she was right about that one. After all, Dalego Junction is a strange place, invisible to most, a pit stop at best. But to some, it's more than a town past its prime. It's a distant beacon, always drawing them closer. Its victims are few, but its power undeniable. I would know. But I can't pretend to know why it draws us here or what it wants. Still, you can't weasel fate by questioning it or hiding in your hole. At best, you can delay the inevitable. But you won't know if you're bleeding until you rip off the bandage and see.